Rich Sander here, and this is Moral Misfits. Today we have John Rafferty, editor of Peak, and today our subject's going to be, me stupid? No, you stupid. And welcome to our show. Hi, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine, Rich. I'm glad to be here, and I hope you're doing well as well.
I'm doing great, and I'm excited to talk to you again. And one of the things that's come across my mind a lot lately is that there seems to be a divide in this country. I think you might have heard of it or seen it somewhere. But one of the things that bothers me, especially as somebody who is an atheist, or you might some people at home might be agnostic, secular minded, science minded, that we focus in our own community a lot about being smart, trying to understand things. I mean, you're an educated guy, you've been a writer your whole life. Me, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm curious and I like to learn things. And we have those discussions in our community all the time. And one of the things that caught my attention is that when we get around and start calling people names and just going back and forth, there just does seem to be some kind of disconnect that I can't really understand. This idea of, I wouldn't necessarily call it ignorance, but it's kind of like an anti-intellectual. It's like, I don't like you Smarty Pants people and stuff. Like, you're a Smarty Pants, right?
I delight in having that being called Smarty Pants. As far as I'm concerned, Smarty Pants is the difference between Smarty Pants and then having your naked behind showing.
Where did this idea of not being smart, being okay, or being cool, or being that the intelligentsia was wrong and out to get everybody? I don't understand where this really came from in our culture and history. Do you have an idea how that came about?
Part of American tradition. Now, let's step back one moment. Not so smart people are also human beings. They have rights just like the rest of us. And the fact that you may not be educated, or the fact that you may be a little slower than your neighbor, that doesn't mean that you are not worthy of being an American citizen. There is an anti-intellectual tradition in America that goes all the way back to the founding, that says that too much education is bad for you because it will lead you away from the faith of your fathers, from the old-time religion, from the received wisdom that we have had for thousands of years. That is basic to America. Peak, the newsletter that I edit and have for almost a couple of decades now, is the newsletter of the Secular Humanist Society of New York. And the first honorary member we ever had was the great writer, Isaac Asimov. And I'm going to read what he said, that there is a cult of ignorance in the United States, and there always has been. The strain of anti-intellectualism has been a constant thread winding its way through our political and cultural life, nurtured by the false notion that democracy means that, quote, my ignorance is just as good as your knowledge, unquote. And that's a problem that we've had all the way back as far as we've had in America. And it's something that we have to deal with. And it's something that's going on right now to our very, very great danger.
Yeah.
We are in danger of losing even more people to a pandemic right now, more people than the 200,000 who are already dead, because there are people out there who say, I don't believe in science. I don't believe in critical thinking. I don't believe in experts. I believe what I want to believe, and what I want to believe is that my friend told me about something that his barber saw on the internet, that masks actually kill you.
Oh,
And I believe it. And the hell with whatever your double dome scientists say. I'm not
well,
going to believe it.
there's a difference between stupidity and ignorance.
There's a big difference.
I think we need to talk about it.
Yeah, ignorance. There's no sin in ignorance. There's a sin, if you want to call it that way, to use a religious term, in stupidity. I should say, in willful ignorance, in saying, don't confuse me with facts. Don't disturb my alternative facts. I refuse to learn anything. I mean, there has been, I wrote about it in Peak, I think 8 years ago, and it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
There is a clause in the platform of the Republican Party of Texas that says that they want to, they have not been able to, but that they favor outlawing the teaching of critical thinking in the schools in Texas.
Yeah.
Don't allow critical thinking.
Well, it goes into so many different things. It goes into starting out with religion, and then goes into economics, and then education, and now it's science. And some parts of our culture, look down on other people who go to college, or look down on people who get even a trade, that they're not common folk. I think that's a problem. I think it also it hits so many different sectors, but now the whole thing about science is really bad, because we're not able to solve these current problems like the pandemic, or even larger problems that are going to come later, like climate crisis. It started out as global warming, and then went to climate science, and then that's now a climate crisis. And just to be woefully ignorant of that is really giving us a problem that's going to be much harder to solve, because we're just kicking the can down the road. And I know it started with religion. I think you're right. It started with religion because Thomas Paine, he was a very critical person of religion, and a lot of people saw that movement in the early years of our nation, and they fought against that, and because there was just they were scared of that, and I think that it's really behooves me to really try to understand this, but in the end, I'm just perplexed, because if you don't want to know something that is important, then you end up suffering the consequences from others who want to work against your interest, not only economically, politically, but socially. I see this all the time, and I find it disturbing. And as an atheist and humanist and a secular person and science-minded person, we need to find our own people and share together. And I think a lot of what I like to do with Moral Misfits is to be this community where we can come together and we can share, hang out, watch our show, Moral Misfits, and then hang out afterwards and build community. I think once the greater world starts seeing secular, science-minded people as cool and all right, and it's natural and it's a fun place to hang out, I think a lot more people are going to join and get on the bandwagon. So, John, you know, as a humanist, I think there's a lot of things that we can do as humanists together. And to put a finer point on it, I remember back to a discussion, or actually the interview I did with Tony Davis, and he's a military guy, and he was sitting down with a bunch of military people, and they were talking about the Bible. And well, here, listen to this.
If I can share one of the other seriously life-altering experiences I had, there was a conference I went to called CCJO, Capstone Concept for Joint Operations. Probably never heard of it, right?
Never heard of it.
Yeah, most people haven't. But it's actually one of the most important meetings of its sort in America. Every few years, you get together the most senior leaders from the U.S. government, from the military, from the diplomatic corps. There were just tons of 3- and 4-star generals, ambassadors, and I'm sitting there as a lieutenant colonel. And depending on your perspective, that's a high-ranking officer. In this room, I was low man on the totem pole. And my buddy that I was there with, I assured him that I wasn't going to say anything because I'm around all these, like Newt Gingrich was there, Fran Townsend was there, and again, just tons of 3- and 4-star generals. So my goal, to not be noticed by anybody. And a lady who was from the Central Intelligence Agency, Directorate of Operations, stood up and said something about how Islam can never be moderated the way Christianity has into a religion of peace. Individual Muslims might be peaceful, but Islam cannot be peaceful. And she's standing right in front of me, and I'm looking at her. My buddy's like, just chill. My buddy knew I was, and
just hold off,
yeah,
hold off.
And I was like, I wanted to hear the punchline. And she said, it's because the Quran is such a violent book. The sanctions for violence in the Quran will keep Islam from ever becoming a true religion of peace. And the thing that got me was when I looked around the room, almost every single person, nobody challenged her on it, but almost every single person was nodding in agreement. And that belied to me an ignorance both of Islam and of Christianity, of the holy books. And I raised my hand, and my buddy's like, he audibly said, oh shit. And I said, surely you know that there are more acts of violence in the Bible than the Quran directed by God. And everybody shifted their attention to me, and I was like, uh-oh, I just messed up. And she says, what are you talking about? I said, if you take the Quran and the Bible, lay them down, start flipping pages, and put a tick mark every time God says to smite someone, to kill every single one of them, maybe except for the virgin females, or every one of them that breathes, including their livestock, you have more acts of violence in the Bible than the Quran. Now, in fairness, Bible's a bigger book, you know, so as a percentage of the total book, I think the Quran has a little bit more. But sheer number of violent acts, the Bible has more. And a chaplain, another one of my chaplain friends, Air Force colonel, said, you're talking about the Old Testament. Sir, what's your point? The Old Testament doesn't matter? He said, no, it doesn't. I said, oh, then why was Jesus necessary? And so I'm in a full-blown debate now with two people that outrank me, and I have the attention of most of the senior leadership in the U.S. government. And
Catching a little attention at this conference, aren't you?
Yeah. And that was not my intent, but that's how it played out. So I said, why was Jesus necessary? And the chaplains, what kind of question is that? I said, I think it's a really good question, because without the Old Testament, we have no prediction of the coming Messiah, which I think you probably believe Jesus was. He goes, yeah, of course I do. Okay, and there was no original sin of Adam and Eve, so there was no reason for Jesus to come give that substitutional atonement, which, by the way, is not a very good idea. It's kind of evil, human sacrifice, when God could have just said, you're forgiven, because I made a mistake the way I set everything up. And I really thought I was in a lot of trouble. The chaplain was not happy. The lady from the CIA was not at all happy with me. But my mentor, who was a retired 4-star general, came over, and I said, sir, I'm sorry. I hope I didn't. He goes, no, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to challenge everybody's assumptions in here, and you got all these people thinking now. And so he made my day, you know, because if anybody in that room was going to come down on me hard, it was him. And he said, that's exactly what you should be doing. So
got them all thinking.
Yeah, got them all thinking.
So Tony was really talking about how he had a lot of pressure on him to not speak up, but he did speak up. And it was great that the general at the end backed him up and says, you know, you were right to say what you said because you're challenging the viewpoint. And I think that that's what's really critical is that if you don't challenge the viewpoint or challenge what people know, then those who are saying kind of stupid things, you know, get their way, and then everybody just agrees with it. And I think that's an important thing that we have as secular, humanist, atheist, science-minded people. We need to speak up more.
No question about it, Rich. Absolutely no question about it. And I'm delighted that there's at least one general in the Army who's a critical thinker. I like to know that. I like to know that. I'm glad you showed that video because it does come right to what we're talking about. The thing is that we have got to be careful on our own. We have got to make sure that we don't fall into a group think mentality that, you know, well, all of us here with good educations and above average IQs, we all think this way. So the rest of you up and listen. Yeah. It's what we got to be careful of. The right wing and the dumbass wing in America right now is making too much of it. You know, they're screaming that we're ruining people's lives with our cancel culture and all. That's not true. But something that we got to be careful of, something we got to watch out for, because we don't want to make the mistakes from the left that they make from the right.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think that what we're really talking about is trying to create a community that can talk about these subjects, but we can also say, okay, we're challenging your assumptions and we might be able to depart as agreeing to disagree, but we don't need to be animus. We don't need to be vicious. We don't need to get into name calling. And I think that that's what you're really talking about. And I agree. I think as humanists, whatever or atheist group that you belong in, or a skeptics group, or a science, pro-science group in the United States, it's, we all have to definitely be careful about it, but we can't sit on our hands. We need to get out there. And if you are a person like that, you might not be in a big city like New York or LA or Portland, Oregon or Miami. You might be rural. You might not know that there's groups out there. And I interviewed Mandesa Thomas a while back, and that interview's on YouTube. So if you want to go look at it on Moral Misfits channel. And Mandesa had a good point about, you know, we got to be out there. And this is what she had to say.
What keeps me going is a number of people who, when they find us, there was one woman in St. Louis. I just returned from there a few days ago. And she was in tears because she said, I really thought I was the only one. And that she felt so isolated and so estranged from her family members and friends due to her point of view, due to her non-belief and her questioning. And so to know that there was an organization, and also that we have an affiliate there, to know that there were other Black atheists, in particular Black women atheists, who were stepping up, who were participating and also leading organizations such as ours, was just it was overwhelming in a good way. Yeah. And oftentimes when we meet new people for the first time, and they tell us that we were the first atheists that they've ever encountered.
Really?
Especially Black atheists.
Yes.
That knowing that we were there for them and that we were able to provide that support just continues to motivate and inspire me, because even there are times where I get tired. Mm-hmm. There are times where I feel like, oh my gosh, this is going nowhere, or this is just becoming too much. We have folks who are like, thank you very much for being here. And then we also get some very good questions from people who may still be believers, but that they want to know more about atheism, humanism, etc. So it's not just that people are turning away from us. There is genuine curiosity that's out there, and there are just some people who didn't know before, but by us being visible and being present, then they're able to ask us questions that they wouldn't be able to ask their pastors, or that they wouldn't be able to ask their other religious family members and friends, that they can talk to us and open up. Even if they don't agree with us, they're still able to have a sufficient conversation that goes against what they were raised to, to do. And so being there for them, whether they're believers or non-believers, has just been one of the most rewarding things ever.
So how would they actually find you?
Well, first, they may find us on our website at blacknonbelievers.org. And I am also everywhere on, on social media. I do have a personal Twitter account at Mandy0904. I'm on Instagram at Mandesa0904. You may also find us on Instagram at BNonbelievers Inc., Twitter at BNonbelievers, the B and the N are capitalized. We respond very quickly to email correspondence, where also you can also be connected to any of our meetup groups on our website. And we do have a YouTube channel, Nonbelievers Inc. And so, but we're most responsive on, and we're on Facebook, of course. We have a public page, Black Nonbelievers. I do have a page on Facebook as well. And so people can just contact us through any of those avenues, especially on, social media.
Mandesa really is an extraordinary person who's got all these different chapters throughout the United States. And that's an example of one area in our community that's a little bit tailored to the Black community. That's they have unique struggles, and she's speaking to that. And if you are inclined to do that, we encourage people to go and look up Black Nonbelievers and join their organization and support what they're doing. And if you're close to one of their meetups, right now they're all being done on Zoom, but soon when the pandemic's over, or next year when the pandemic's over, we're all going to be meeting again. And I encourage you to go meet those. And John, I want to thank you for your time today.
My pleasure.
And if you're out there and you want to get to talk to John or get on his newsletter, we're going to put a link down below in YouTube, so you can email John directly. And this is the latest peek that he has out this week. So if you want to get that, the link is below. It's editor@shusny.org. And
editor at shsny.org. Yes.
And I want to thank you, John, for your time today, and have a good week.
My pleasure, Rich. Be well.
Bye.